Welcome to She Has a PhD, the podcast where we celebrate extraordinary women in science. I'm your host, Isabel Castanho, and I'm thrilled to be part of this empowering journey with you today. She Has a PhD is part of the Nonconformist Scientists, a nonprofit organization comprised of a dedicated team of passionate women. From neuroscience to physics, our guests come from all corners of the scientific spectrum, united by their passion for knowledge and determination to make a difference. Through these conversations, we aim to inspire the next generation of female scientists to dream big, aim high, and become leaders in their respective fields. So, if you've ever wondered what it's like to be a woman leader in science, if you find yourself astonished by the existence and functioning of a complex organ like the brain, like me, or if you simply crave inspiring stories of perseverance and success, you've come to the right place. Get ready to be inspired. She Has a PhD starts now. Today, I have the immense pleasure of hosting Dr. Fiona Elwood, a leader in the field of neuroscience, as our guest. Dr. Elwood received her doctorate in neuroscience from the University of London in the United Kingdom and completed her postdoctoral work in neuroscience at Stanford University in the United States. She has deep expertise in molecular mechanisms of neurodegeneration and drug discovery and development, with experience in the field for more than 20 years. She has worked across several therapeutic areas, including neurodegeneration, immunology, psychiatry, and neurodevelopment, from target validation to clinical proof of concept. Dedicated to meeting the needs of patients and their caregivers who suffer from diseases of the nervous system, in her current role as VP Disease Area Leader in Neurodegeneration at Janssen here in the United States, she is responsible for the science and strategy of neurodegeneration and some of the neurology programs at Janssen. A role model for many, including myself, she believes we need to be continuously dedicated to scientific excellence and that the role of a leader is to bring out the best in people. I am eager to explore her captivating journey today. Let's start by getting to know her better. Dr. Elwood, could you please briefly tell us a bit more about yourself, maybe something that I didn't cover in my introduction?
Absolutely. Thanks, Isabel. It's such a privilege to be here with you today. Yes, my name is Fiona Elwood, and I'm originally from the UK, from England. And I started my scientific career there. I went to undergraduate at Cambridge University, and that's where I really started exploring and learning about biomedical science, and then my first introduction to the brain.
Wow. Yeah. And I know we share, I heard another podcast where we were guests, and I know we share this passion about the brain. I can resonate more when I heard you talk about the brain as an obvious thing, because it's the name of our podcast, as it suggests, you do have a PhD. So I'm curious, why did you decide to do a PhD in the first place?
I was at university. I thought I was going to be a chemist. I had my first neuroscience, lectures, and started to learn more about the brain and the complexities and fascination of the brain. And there's this kind of beautiful combination of this like existential question of how the brain works and how that, informs who we are and our character and our actions in an incredibly molecular way. And I love that kind of bridge between the very detailed molecular components to like these big questions. So as an undergraduate, I did a summer research project in Florida at the Mayo Clinic there, and then they invited me essentially to go back and to do my PhD there with them. So my PhD is from the University of London, but I did a lot of my thesis research in Florida. So why did I want to do a PhD? I think I loved the area and I just wanted to learn more. I also loved adventure. And there was this opportunity to go to Florida and live on the beach and have a very different life that was very exciting to me. I think some of the other things I considered was to go and do an MD, become a doctor. But especially at that time, like the kind of lifestyle requirements of being an MD didn't really attract me. And I think there's always this balance of who you are and what you want your life to be, and then what you're really interested in and what do you want to do for your work. And you've got to find a way of balancing both. And then also I think my university was pretty traditional. The things I got exposed to were pretty traditional. So, PhD, MD, lawyer, accountant, and I think maybe today people have different, in different situations, people kind of explore different options more. But yes, that was really why there was big pull factors of the adventure, both the kind of personal adventure and also the intellectual adventure of being able to study the brain further.
It sounds like you were also eager for knowledge, right? That's what you're saying, like wanting to learn more about the brain, that your passion. That's very, I
Absolutely.
resonate to that too. So you've touched a little bit on neuroscience, on what inspired you to pursue a career in neuroscience. What about neurodegenerative diseases in particular? What made you choose that area to focus on?
At the beginning, I was exposed to a few different things, some very basic neurobiology, ion channel function, pharmacology. But really, it was that disease focus of being able to understand science and then apply it to big questions in medicine that really attracted me. And you have to sort of think 20, 25 years ago, we were just starting to understand the molecular basis of some neurodegenerative diseases. You think, amyloid peptide, first purified from Alzheimer's disease or from Down syndrome, initially brains, Glenner and Wong, 1984. John Hardy, Alison Goetz, first identification of a genetic mutation in the APP protein that causes Alzheimer's disease. That was like 6 years before I did my undergraduate. And then when I was an undergraduate, first mutation in tau, leading to understanding of the role of tau independently in neurodegenerative diseases. So it was like really at that early stage of identification of genetics and this molecular basis of disease that other areas of neuroscience, frankly, didn't have at that time. Like we didn't know any molecular basis or genetics behind psychiatric diseases. So I wanted to apply biology to disease, and neurodegenerative diseases was where that traction was really starting to get started.
Very interesting. And growing, I'm talking about a lot about the brain in this podcast because for those that don't know, I'm also a neuroscientist, but it's quite interesting because I sort of grew up or studied with these things being known already. And it was so recently that is quite interesting. Your current title at Janssen, as I said in the introduction, is VP Disease Area Leader in Neurodegeneration. Could you explain what you do and what your current role entails and the impact you are making now and will be making in the future through your current position?
Thank you. Yes. So I've been in this role 18 months, and I think I'm starting to understand really what the role is and how I can really have an impact. It takes a little bit of time sometimes. So I'm essentially responsible for the whole neurodegeneration portfolio, from targets, what targets should we work on, what areas of biology are going to be most promising, all the way through early clinical development, late clinical development to phase 3. So it's really this end-to-end view of Janssen's work in neurodegeneration. And Janssen have worked in neurodegeneration for decades and have had a really long commitment to Alzheimer's in particular, but other neurodegenerative diseases as well. And what I like about this structure is it gives me the opportunity to think of the whole spectrum. So that biology, the molecules, the targets, the pathways, the programs, the pharmacology, what has to be true at what stage in order to have enough confidence to advance a program further forward, all the way through to end stage clinical development and making sure that these programs, that the molecule is going to be safe and effective and be able to access people, to be able to get to the people who really need it. So it's that end-to-end view, which is quite unique in the industry to have that opportunity to have that end-to-end view.
It's actually very interesting to hear how your early passion for neuroscience, how you started, and it led to such a fascinating career, making actual real impact. That's very, very interesting. So I'm curious to hear if there were any women leaders who played a significant role in shaping your journey.
Yes, many different leaders. And you were asking about women leaders and mentors. And I was thinking back to all the people who've influenced me, many of whom are women over my career, and who influenced me in different ways at different stages of my career. And I think sometimes we look for a perfect mentor or a perfect person or a singular hero, in our culture and in our life. And there are no single heroes. Everyone is complicated. and everyone has different, different strengths. And, I think about some of the women who really helped me and influenced me over the years. When I first went to Florida, my mentor in Florida was a woman, Eileen McGowan. And not only did she really help me, as I was like learning how to do experiments, starting off with my PhD, but she also really helped me transition to living in America. As many of us know, when you move around the world for these scientific roles, like there's a whole load of other complexity that you have to deal with and manage in your life and in your emotional life as well in order to be able to be successful in your professional life. And then maybe when I was at, my first industry job, one of my first managers there was a woman, Deborah Slipperts, who not only took a risk on me, gave me great opportunities, but she really showed me this example of a woman going for it. And there was a big promotion, there was a gap, someone got moved or, left, and there was this big, visible opportunity. And she stepped up and said, I want that role. And it was clear, rational, ambitious, and she wasn't ashamed of it. And she was such a good role model for going for it when you really wanted something. And then maybe one other person to call out, Cindy Grosskreutz at Novartis. I'd stepped up to an interim role. It was a big step up, multiple levels, to be an interim, like enterprise-wide leader. And it was going to be for a short time, and it ended up being for a year and a half during the pandemic. And it was tough for many reasons, and I had to really perform on a different level in a different stage. And she was just a very kind, thoughtful, but business-like mentor to me. Clear about what I needed to do, but helpful for me in order to make sure I could get there. Her generosity and her partnership were really influential, and on both sides, in the ability to actually do the stuff, but also the ability to manage the stress and the demands of the job as well.
Speaking of mentorship, I mean, you proved with your experience, but it's something that is quite talked in general that has such a big impact, can have such a big impact, mentorship in general. For sure, it sounds that it played a vital role in shaping your career path. So I'm now curious, looking now from the perspective of a leader, how do you foster mentorship within and outside your team?
Great question. I think there's a few different aspects. One is providing the opportunity for it. So making sure that people can access it themselves. There's a part of it where a person needs to want it, and they need to be able to step up and say, actually, I need a bit of help in this area, or I would love to talk to someone about how to manage this aspect or grow in this area of my career. But the person has to want it. You can't kind of force it on anyone, but making those opportunities available. I did an amazing program, maybe 15 years ago with the HBA, Healthcare Businesswomen's Association, and it was a group mentoring program. So two female mentors they were both from biotech, so different exposure experience to what I had. And then 4 of us from different areas in the program. So it was a group mentoring program. And that meant that we learned from each other as well as learning from the mentors. And that was a really beneficial situation. So that could be one opportunity. Another thing is actually training people how some of the mentoring skills. Part of that can be giving a guidelines or framework for how the mentoring relationship could go. Other aspects is a training in coaching programs. There's this system called GROW. So goal, reality, opportunities, what? And it's a really helpful way of working with someone through a problem to help them work out what they want to do next, for example. But if you don't know about it, you don't have those skills, and then you can't help someone. So giving people opportunities to grow, and then valuing it as well. And when you see people being really good mentors, going out of their way and spending that time, actually making that a skill that's valued in the organization.
I like that. I agree. Changing gears slightly, as a successful leader in neuroscience, your achievements and contributions have undoubtedly set you apart in your field. I can imagine that in some instances, you may have found yourself as being the only woman sitting at the table. And I imagine that this can present unique challenges and opportunities. Could you share your experiences in these settings? How have you navigated such situations and leveraged your unique perspective to drive positive change and foster inclusivity within the scientific community?
There's one moment that struck out. So when I was in my first industry job, I was at this company for 10 years, and I ended up, after maybe 5 years, leading one of the most high-profile programs in the company. And so I was a very junior project leader leading a very high-profile program. And there were times when I was in the room with this team that I was leading, realizing that I was the only woman and I was the youngest person by far in the room working on this program. And there was one point where we had a training for project leaders, and there were maybe 40 project leaders in this room, and 4 of us were female. So leading a program is, it's like a kind of early mid-career kind of building block in, growing in your pharmaceutical career, where, you're responsible for a multidisciplinary team and to make progress with a significant budget and key milestones, for the program. So, it's like an important skill to learn. And I just took a step back and I was like, oh my gosh, there's only 4 women in this room who have who've been given this opportunity, and also who have been given the training in order to be able to learn this skill and do it well. So I think at the time, I definitely had imposter syndrome at various different points. I had a little mantra in my head of, I went to Cambridge, I can't be that bad. Which was just that kind of reminder of like, you're not perfect, you don't have everything in place, but you've got a few achievements under your belt, and whatever they are for whatever person, but you got a few things under your belt, you can't be that bad. Go in with that knowledge of the confidence of the achievements that you've had, and don't let that sort of fear hold you back. But then it also made me realize how having the opportunities is so important, having the training is so important, and making sure that, the women that came after me had those opportunities, had in the everyday work, whether it's to be a leader on this project, or to go to that training, or to be in the room when that decision was made, or to really be considered fully in that promotion discussion. And I think kind of coming out of it, that's where I've had a lot of my focus, is to make sure that, women are considered in all of those everyday aspects of work that lead up to those small things that result in people having the right experience and the right training in order to take on that next role.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. And my question was also thinking about it. I've even been reading, and there's so many examples, not only in science. Recently, I heard how seatbelts, when came out first, were not thought about women. Because we need to have, that's why I was asking about inclusivity and diversity in these groups. In leadership, you have to have representation to think beyond, it's not even outside the box, but considering people that are different, if there's no representation, who would be thinking about it? So related with this topic, and you touched a little bit on this already, but in your opinion, what are key factors in promoting gender diversity and inclusion within science and pharma? What are the effective or the most effective strategies, in your opinion, to encourage and support young girls and adult women, including moms, to thrive in their scientific careers?
Great question. And I think that every person you ask will give you a different answer, because there are so many different stages along the way that give different women and different types of women from different backgrounds the vision, the opportunity, the education, the experiences, the training, and the role models in order for them to work their way through that whole course. So I guess I will answer from the perspective of the place where I have my most focus and maybe could have the most impact. And that's really in the workplace, and making sure that we recruit a diverse set of people. And when I sit on recruitment panels, I'm thinking about the diversity of the recruitment panel, and I make sure my colleagues think about the diversity of the recruitment panel. Or that when we're putting in recruitment policies into place, that we're really following through on those diversity guidelines and making sure we have those opportunities in place. Then when, I have the team in place and you're seeing the people that you're working with, making sure that women have the opportunities to step up and take leadership positions and have the training opportunities and all those little things on a day-to-day basis that we're really thinking kind of across the whole range of talent and making sure everybody is considered and no one gets left out. Because the reality is women are caregivers or often take up a greater caregiving role in their families and personal environments. And that could be in many different ways. That can be as a parent, in your circle of family and friends and acquaintances. It can be for elderly parents as well. And the roles for being a caregiver is really important to who you are as a person and your relationship with people who really matter to you. And it takes time, and it takes they're competing priorities. So making sure that we have policies in place for everyone that allow people to manage those external responsibilities well as managing their internal work responsibilities. And I think that is for everyone. When you do it for everyone, it really helps women. But when you do it for everyone, it also makes it more normal, makes it more acceptable, and all of those things help women as well. One of the things I've loved seeing, Isabel, over my career is how parental leave has changed. My kids are only 8 and 10. I feel like they're young, and it's not that long ago. But when I had, my eldest son, you got 6 weeks paid for short-term disability, and that was it. And then the company gave some extra unpaid and, had some other flexible policies. And I think men got 1 week, like fathers got, the non-birth parent got like 1 week. I've worked at big pharma companies, so, big pharma is different. But like now the standard is 12 to 16 weeks paid and considerable chunk of money and time for the non-birth parent as well. And that's like really different in a short 8 years since I gave birth. So I'm really proud of how our industry has changed in that area, in that way. And I think making sure that we keep giving opportunities for people to manage their other responsibilities in life that make them a happy, contented, productive person, as well as giving them the opportunities in the workplace as well.
Yeah, that's all very interesting. I came across something that I hadn't thought before. It's actually one of our future guests, Fiona Elwood, in her book mentions that shared parental leave, how that can have such a big impact on women's career, because it also then gives the opportunity for both the birth and non-birth parent to share, takes away a little bit of the fear of the employer that it's only going to be the mom that they don't want to employ because they're scared. No, it's equal. So that's a very, very, very good point. Okay, I would stay here for many more hours, but unfortunately we need to wrap up our conversation. This has been amazing. Let's finish with 3 lightning questions. Are you ready?
Okay, yes.
Okay, so first question, what is the most memorable moment in your career so far?
Okay, so I was thinking about this and I was thinking, what about this eureka moment or that eureka moment? But actually, the most memorable moment was when I realized that I was asking the wrong question, or I was perseverating on the wrong point. And, when I was a postdoc, I had my big publication, and oh my gosh, that thing got rejected. We got scooped. It was a nightmare getting that published, and it really got me down. I wanted to move to industry, so I took an industry position before my paper got published, which again, is questionable whether you should do that. But in this case, it worked out. And then, 6 months later, my paper got published, got accepted. But actually, I was like, okay, because I was happy. I was doing the job that I wanted. I was really engaged in my new life. And I realized that, excessive focus I'd put on that one accomplishment was actually focusing on the wrong thing. And I think it was such an important point in my career because it made me realize that sometimes the thing that we get obsessed with is actually the wrong question or the wrong topic.
Wow. Question 2. What piece of advice would you give to young female scientists?
I think I would say make sure you get the feedback that you need and make sure that you find that nugget, listen to the feedback, even when you don't like it, and find that nugget that's true. Sometimes people give women more gentle or soft skill type feedback rather than specific feedback on the content of their work. And, women have got to make sure that they don't just settle for the soft skills, but they also need the feedback on the content of their work. And then sometimes when I look back at the feedback that I've had, I've been enraged because I've seen the gendered lens through which the feedback was given. And I felt very frustrated about that. But over time, I realized that could be true. And there could be a nugget of truth in there for me as well. And that I had to be able to separate what bit of the feedback was about the person giving the feedback and not about me. And then what bit of the feedback could I really take and apply and help myself improve going forward. Vitamin F, all that feedback.
Great advice. Last lightning question. Is there a remarkable woman leader in science you admire and think the world should know more about?
Yes. There was this amazing woman called Marian Diamond, and she is the subject of a great film called My Love Affair with the Brain. She was a neuroanatomist. She actually did part of the autopsy on Albert Einstein's brain. She worked on glia in the brain when, everybody thought about neurons. They didn't think about anything else in the brain. And she taught neuroanatomy at UC Berkeley for decades. So as well as being a pioneering scientist in an era where there really weren't many female scientists at her level, when you watch the videos of her teaching at UC Berkeley, she has this curiosity and this joy all the way through into her 80s, through to the end of her life. And I think she's such a great example of a woman defying the odds, making significant scientific progress, and doing it with curiosity and joy.
She sounds fascinating. I need to check out the film. Thank you, Fiona, for sharing your story and experiences, for introducing us to an inspiring women leader, you. Having you as our guest on She Has a PhD has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it, Isabel. It's been great getting to know you too.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to She Has a PhD. Please consider subscribing to our podcast. We'll be back soon with more incredible stories of women breaking barriers in science. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and never forget that you have the power to make an impact on the world. Yay, that was great!
Yay! Cool.